Welcome to our second month of Develop Time Management Skills. Let me know in the chat if you can hear me well, if you're comfortable, or if I can do anything to make this live event as engaging as possible. Just let me know in the comment box below if you're on YouTube, or in the chat if you're here on Zoom. And you can also add where you're from. Those of you that are viewing the recording, feel free to also comment and let us know how you're doing. So yes, how you're doing is really important when it comes to developing time management skills, because we have to be aware of what's going on with us before we can deal with time and anything else in our lives. So we'll start with me. A little bit about myself. I'm the moderator of this 8-month-long course, which means that you can't start it, in November or in the summer, because you're going to cram. And cramming is not a good idea when it comes to time management or any other learning for that matter. So a little bit about me. I have taught EFL and ESL in the K-12 in higher education for over 40 years using computer-assisted language learning, which means that I use computers in those days. But I do not use computers anymore as such. I use generally mobile devices, and my students use smartphones in the classroom, which is a lot easier to manage and faster. I've been helping teachers integrate technology into their classes and courses since 2006. I've also been a YouTuber since then, and I guess social networks started around that time, 2005, with Facebook and all the others, such as what is now X. I started teaching Moodling and how to Moodle in 2009, and I also started 2 free online conferences. Everything is free because I believe that educators should not have to pay for professional development. I currently teach at a university at a distance through Moodle in Greece. And the program that I teach is an MSc program on augmented and virtual realities. This, as I said, is an 8-month-long course until the end of November. So if you haven't joined, it's not too late to join. I'm just saying that it's not a good idea to join at the end. But if you'd like to join now, that's fine too. So this month, you're going to focus on goal setting and prioritization. Now, when you think of goal setting and prioritizing, what comes to mind? If you could think about that, add it to the chat. The chat is not available only to us while we're here, but you can also add it in the comment box. So what do you think of when you think of these two terms? Every answer is good because it's your answer. And I see that it's afternoon in some parts of the world. It's morning where I am. So, and it's evening in other parts. So thank you for sharing that. You think of work. You don't think of your own personal life. You think mostly of work. That's right, because that's how we were taught, I guess, to think of goal setting and prioritization when we think of things that we have to do, not something that we want or maybe we choose to do. So it's part of work. That's right. Thank you for sharing that. At 30s. Okay, thank you for sharing that. Right, so keep thinking about that, what it means to you. I think it's important to first of all understand what we think of and how we feel about goals. Are we for goals? Are we against goals? Do we believe in making lists of things, or do we not? What is our status on that? So feel free to use the chat. So this is a course, as I said, but we'll be talking about these items regardless of whether you're taking the course or not. And hopefully you will benefit from the information. So we'll be focusing on SMART framework. We'll start with that. And we will also focus on Eisenhower's matrix for prioritization. So that's a president, was a president in the United States. So by the end of the month, you should have written SMART goals, and we'll see what that stands for. If you're familiar with it, let me know in the chat, and received feedback. Now, collaborative learning and getting feedback from peers is super important because we don't always see what others see. So our two eyes are not enough. Sometimes we need more pairs of eyes so that we can manage to see more than what we normally see. So getting feedback is important. And then you will have prioritized tasks. Now, these don't necessarily have to be work-related tasks. They could be anything that you do, any activity for both personal and work-related. And you will have also created a system to identify and address high priority tasks. Now, this is really hard to do from my experiences, but maybe you'll find it easier to manage, to prioritize tasks. What is high, what is important, what is unimportant, and yet very urgent, and so on. As well, you will continue working on tiny habits. We can't leave them out because they are so powerful. And I hope you had a chance to try them out in March, but you'll be continuing with that as a way to prioritize. And you'll also be doing an activity before going to bed. So get ready for that. So these are the tasks. There's an open forum and you're welcome to use it. It's for you. You can add your ideas, thoughts, maybe come up with some questions for the others or for me, or just for yourself. Reflect on anything that's related to time management. And you, because everything is related. And we'll learn more about that, how it's not something external to us, but it's really, really us. And SMART goals and sticky notes. We'll continue with the sticky notes. You'll also develop a personal plan, and these are all clickable. So you'll be able to click and do if you're going from this presentation. Presentation is in the course at the beginning of the section for April, but it'll also be available in the description of this YouTube video. And then there'll also be sticky notes for Eisenhower Matrix. You'll develop a plan based on Eisenhower's Matrix. You'll also go through some sticky notes for tiny habits and the activity that I mentioned, tiny habits of bedtime and prioritization, and of course, the journaling. Now, I want to stress here that the journal is private. Only you and I view it. Nobody else can see it. So you can add anything there. So this is what Eisenhower Priority Matrix looks like. Let me know in the chat if you've seen this before. I'd be curious about that. Anyone else not hear anything? Is the audio okay for everyone? I'm just checking here because I noticed that not everybody's able to hear me. All right, so if one person can, that means everybody should be able to hear me. So perhaps check your audio settings if you cannot. So about this, have you heard or seen the Eisenhower's priority matrix? Yes, no. Nope. All right. I like the nopes because it's easier to learn things when you don't know anything about them than to know something and then unlearn it and try to add it to your repertoire. Sometimes it's not as easy. Okay, so I see lots of no's. I don't see a yes yet. So let's take a look at it and see what you understand from it. Notice here, it's divided into four. There's urgent and important. Now that's pretty easy to conceive. What is urgent and important, for example? And yet it's not that easy because you would probably have to compare it to something else. So if this is urgent, then something else must not be as urgent. And perhaps it's urgent. I need to get this done. This is an urgent matter, but it's not important. Can you visualize something like that that's urgent, but not important? We generally think of things as being, that are urgent, that are very important. We place a lot of importance on things that are urgent. If something comes up, if I don't know, if there's a leak in the water or something, you see that the water is sprouting and then there's probably something going on there. That's urgent. But is it important? Probably. Okay, so differentiating between what's urgent and important and what's urgent and not important. Okay, and this is what we generally do. We go for what's urgent but not important. We feel that it's urgent. Okay, I have a phone call. Somebody's calling me right now. This is urgent, right? Because I have to answer the phone. And most people feel this urgency when their phones start ringing. But is it important? I look at it and I think, well, who would be calling me right now? It can't be that important. So I look at it and I see that it's just, maybe spam or maybe somebody's trying to get me, but I don't even know the person. So it might be urgent because I need to pick up the phone, but it's not always important if I'm doing something else that's perhaps more important. And then there's not urgent, and yet it's important. Okay, start thinking of what is not urgent. I don't have to get it done right now, but it's important. Okay, I think that's fairly easy to think of. Thank you for that. And then what is not urgent and not important? Now, this is also hard. The ones on the right are harder because, it's hard to let go and admit that something is not urgent and it's not important. We generally place everything as urgent and important and have to be done. Okay, that's how we are geared. And this is something that's built in us. So don't feel that you're special if you are like this. We are all like this at some point. We think that everything is urgent. And the reason has to do with the lower brain, with a reptilian brain that is geared to keep us remembering and not forgetting what has to be done. So it is generally telling us that everything is urgent and everything is important and don't forget to do it. So there's a video here that you will find of interest with examples. I suggest you watch it. And it's also in the course and here in the presentation, using the Eisenhower Matrix and what it's all about. It's not long, but I'm not going to play it. I'm going to let you play it later on. All right, so here's a little more with examples. So what is urgent? And we're talking about teachers mostly, since most of us are educators. By the way, is anyone not an educator or a teacher of some kind? I think even if you're a parent, you're an educator. And most of us are teachers because we are constantly teaching others, whether we are teachers by profession or not. We're always sharing information, and we like to share information and help others, regardless of whether we are in the profession or not. So anyone not a teacher here? Let me know yes, no. And we will continue. So responding to a student in crisis, that is urgent. Preparing materials for an upcoming lesson, we need to do that. That's urgent. Submitting grades due today, yes, definitely urgent. That cannot be. These cannot be done on another day. Now, what is not urgent? Designing a new unit or curriculum. You could do that later, okay, when we compare it to the urgent ones. Attending professional development, that can never be urgent, okay, because development takes time anyways. You can't do it on the spot. And creating student feedback forms. It might, in some situations, be critical and urgent, but not really when you compare it to the ones on the left. And then what is urgent and not urgent and not important? I forgot to mention that these are important. They're all important. These are not important. For example, these tasks need to be done soon, but don't require your direct involvement. Taking attendance, if it's automated, it'll be done. Sending reminders, that's not important, not really. Distributing worksheets might be urgent, okay, in some cases, but they're not really important. And then what's not urgent? Scrolling through social media, and everybody would agree that this is not urgent. During prep time, chatting off topic in the staff room, okay? It's not important, and it's definitely not urgent. Checking emails repeatedly, okay? These are examples. Now let's go on. Before we go on, though, are there any questions about the Eisenhower Priority Matrix? Any question is good. So I'm looking at the chat. I see a few responses. Let me see. Yeah, exactly. It depends on your point of view and your situation, of course. All right, so we're going to go on to goals. Now, I don't know what you prefer, prioritizing from a list of things you have to do or goal setting. Some people love to set goals and they love to make lists, and some don't. So let's take a look at the SMART goals. One of you mentioned them in the chat, and you are correct. The S stands for specific, the M for measurable, the A for achievable, the R for relevant, and the T for time-bound. Now, specific means that you have to be very specific in what the goal is, and this is not easy to do. Measurable means that you have to think of how you will measure whether you have achieved the goal or not. And the next one, achievable, means that is it practical? Can you achieve it? You can state it, you can measure it, but can you really achieve it? And relevant, how relevant is it? Because if it's not relevant, why achieve it? And time bound, by what date or time will you do it? And these have to be listed. And why is this here? That's the wrong one. Okay, I think I added the wrong. Yeah, but I think it's there in the how to create SMART goals. Yeah, it's correct. Okay, I think this video will help you understand it better. So here's a little bit about specific SMART goals. measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-based. So it has to state what you want to accomplish. Now, some people may say, well, I can't be bothered with this. It takes too long. I can manage anyways. Why do I need these goals? If this has ever gone through your minds, you are very, very normal, because most of us go through this and our minds kick back and say, oh, I can't be bothered with this. This is nonsense. I've managed till now. And yet time management is an issue. So it's a good idea to pause and see where you stand and try it out and see how it goes. So you have a whole month to try these out for yourself. So specific. You state the goal that you want to accomplish. I will improve student engagement in my lessons using interactive activities. But by the way, some people, like myself, sometimes have a goal in mind. They think about it, they say it to themselves, and then they do something about it. And they wonder, why do I have to write this down? But you do. The best way to achieve SMART goals is to write them down. Writing down is very powerful. There's a huge difference between thinking of your goal and going through these in your head and actually writing them down. So when I'm talking about goals, I mean written goals. You write them down, whether you use your keyboard and you do it digitally, or whether you use a pencil. Some people claim that using a pencil or pen is even better. I haven't seen any research on using chalk, but yes, with the pen, because there's a connection between using a pen or pencil and our writing and thinking about it is definitely not the way to do it. And then measurable. The goal includes a way to measure whatever you do and the progress. I will use student polls and participation tracking to measure engagement each week. So it's not just seeing students raise their hands or write things and you feel, oh, they're engaged. No, it's actually to track this engagement and write it down for yourself. And achievable. Is it realistic? Can you accomplish it? And you might say, well, I can't accomplish anything. Let's forget it. No, you can accomplish goals. So don't give up before we start. So introduce at least one interactive activity per lesson or per week, but introduce one at a time over the next 4 weeks, and you have a chance to do it if this is your goal. You can try this out. Next is relevant. Does it fit your broader or greater teaching objectives or your school objectives, for that matter? An example, this supports my aim, and you write this down, to improve learning outcomes and increase classroom participation. Now, I'm not sure about learning outcomes in this case because I don't know if you can measure it. But I think increased classroom participation, you can measure. You might not have tests on interaction or see whether interaction is connected to learning outcomes. It might not be, it may be, but that's another story. Time bound. You have to have a deadline by the end of the month, by the 30th of April, by next week, and give a date. Try to make it as restrictive as possible. I will achieve this by the end of the current school term. That's very, very vague. Okay, try not to be so open and be specific. Any questions so far before we get into tiny habits? Okay, let me see. Yeah, I get you. I also have a love-hate relationship with SMART goals or with goals in general. Um, but yeah, writing them down is super important. Now, there's a way of writing it down. You don't have to write them down digitally, or you could actually draw images, and there's a lot of research on that too, on the value of drawing. And even if you don't know how to draw, you can make sticks. There's some amazing videos on that on YouTube on how to create diagrams instead of writing, or you can have codes. If you like codes or icons, just different icons, so that you enjoy the process. The idea is not to hate what you're doing, but to enjoy it. And think of ways of beautifying it, or spending time with it, pleasurable time. You may also want to use food and food images, if that makes you feel good for these goals, and write your SMART goals. Anything that'll make it interesting and loving for you rather than hateful. Next are tiny habits. Tiny habits are very, very powerful. And BJ Fogg has also come up with, by the way, he teaches at Harvard, has a whole program there. And you'll find lots of videos on YouTube. The one that I'm going to suggest right now and show you, not show you today, but you'll be able to watch yourself, is the focus mapping. Again, mapping. Now you can use pen or pencil or any way of doing it. You can use sticky notes at home, these notes that you can stick everywhere, and use that, colorful notes, anything that makes it fun. You could also invite your family to join you and help you out, make it collaborative. It doesn't have to be you alone with yourself or colleagues. And there's the video by BJ, JB, sorry, BJ is also fine. Fogg. And here he demonstrates with sticky notes how this can be done. Tiny habits and focus mapping. By the way, BJ, how many of you have tried tiny habits in the month of March? Let me know in the chat. It could be, usually it's personal, any tiny habit that you start doing, but you do it at the same time as you do other habits. So it's actually developing a new habit within the time frame of an old habit or old situation. I've been doing it for a couple of years now. I actually learned about it from my daughter, one of my daughters, who has been using it and working on it. The idea is to start very, very small. So if it's to change a habit in the bathroom or in your study or in the classroom or anywhere where you spend regular time, that's where you do it one little bit at a time. Or if it's a new room, for example, mindfulness, the way I suggest to start a formal mindfulness practice is to, first of all, first thing you do when you wake up is to open the door of a room where you'd like to practice mindfulness. So you open the door, you look in, close the door, and go out. Next day, or when you're ready, you keep doing this until you're ready for the next stage. The next stage is open the door, go in the room, and then leave. Tiny, tiny. And develop mindfulness that way. And then after a few days of doing the same thing, going in and then leaving the room, you go into the room and then you sit down and then you get up and leave the room. Very, very tiny. And then you do that for a while and then you go into the room, sit down, and sit for 1 minute. You time yourself, stand up and leave. And then you do it slowly, step by step, until you get to 5 minutes of mindfulness every single day. The idea is to do it on a daily basis. Habits cannot be formed if you do them every once in a while. It doesn't work that way. It has to be done every single day. That's the idea behind tiny habits. So think of what you'll be doing in April. So we've got tiny habits. You create habits through small changes, tiny changes. Now, it's really important to make these changes small because otherwise our brain or minds tend to push back. It's like a burnout. It just says no, no, no. And when you get to that no, you know that you did it too quickly. Go back and start small again. If you don't sustain the habit, it means you started too big. Start tiny, one tiny, and make sure that the tiny is easy to do. That's the idea, to make it easy. It's not to work hard, it's to work easy. So the method of prioritizing behaviors by plotting them visually. Now, when I said visually, it could be by writing, it could be by drawing, it could be by sticks, it could be by icons, by stickers, beautiful stickers. Just go buy stickers and stick them. And then, of course, don't forget the celebrations. So you start tiny, you anchor, and this is super important with tiny habits, you anchor to an existing routine, and then you celebrate immediately. So you're anchoring to the habit that is already there. If you wake up in the morning every day and go to the bathroom and you want to make a change in the bathroom, continue with that. If you get up and you walk towards another room, but you never open it, start opening it. So it's really, really tiny. And then sort the potential actions by impact and ease to find the best options. So again, we are anchoring tiny behavior, we celebrate. We focus the mapping on listing the ideas. We plot by impact, and we plot by visibility. So we have to remember that we are very, very kind to ourselves. Nothing should be a dredge. It should be with kindness. You do everything in a kind way with yourself. So you might say, well, how do you do something kind if you don't want to do it? Well, you think of why it might be beneficial to you. And then whenever you do it, you are kind and you only see the good things or you learn from whatever is there. An example is after I brush my teeth, which means that I brush my teeth on a daily basis. If you don't brush your teeth on a daily basis, this will not work. So it has to be anchored to something you already do. So after I brush my teeth, I will floss. One tooth, okay, one tooth. If you want to do more, don't. Don't do more than one little thing at a time. And then smile. And then with the focus mapping, choose top habits based on what's both high impact and easy. What was important to you and easy to do. And then build an automatic habit through success and emotion. You are very important in this, and how you feel is super important. So write it down. Writing down has value. Thinking about it does not. And then identify where to focus your energy for behavior change once you know what is easy and what has high impact. And then time commitment. Remember, there with tiny habits, it's a few seconds. You open the door and you close it. You sit down and you stand up again. You do everything very quickly. With a focus mapping, you do about 20 to 30 minutes for a session. So this is only after you have your habits ready. So this is for April. In March, you should have worked on your tiny habits. If you didn't, then you'll do it in April and then continue in May with a focus mapping. So notice here with tiny habits and the focus mapping, how they differ. Focus mapping is visual, it's a map. It's based on supported by behavior. It's deciding which behaviors or habits to prioritize, because there may be many things that we want to change, that you want to change, that I want to change. I know there are many things that I want to change. I have a huge list. So decide which one you're going to do and then focus on that. Any questions about focus mapping? You'll get a better idea when you watch the video because he explains it and you see it. My tiny walking after getting home. All right, so yeah, walking after getting home before going inside. Okay, walking before going inside the house. I don't know. Are you sure this is something that you want to do? Because that requires pausing and lowering the urge to go in the house, because I know that when I get home from work or from shopping or from anything, the first thing I want to do is get in the house. So this might be quite difficult, and I would do it step by step. So I would first get out of the car and leave everything in the car. And that's the first step. Just get out of the car and close the door and then go to the street to start my walk. And then I would go back into the house or back into the car. I'm not sure about that. You'll have to be very creative in thinking of how to do this and whether you really want to do it. Do you really want to walk after getting home? Or do you mean to go in the house and then go for a walk? You see, it has to be something that you want to really do. Can you, or is this something that's hard? Because if it's too hard and it's not going to give you any benefit, you might want to write down all the benefits of not going in the house after coming home. I mean, I could think of a lot of reasons when my kids were young. After a hard day's work, why would I want to go in the house and do more work? So, going for a walk might be nicer, but think about that and how practical it is, because you don't want to maybe walk some other time. You don't want to do something that's too hard. All right, so see, there are no questions about focus mapping. These are the references, okay, for the month. You might want to take a look at them. So looking forward, I wanted to mention that there are the private, I don't know if it's clear about the private forums for the journaling. I don't know if I showed you that. I thought I had it here. For the journaling, if you were concerned about journaling and you wanted things to be private, you can add their journaling activities. They're all private, which means that only you and I view them. And this is important when we talk about goal setting and prioritization, because someone has to see it. You can also say it at home. You can tell your family members that by the end of the month, I will do so and so. Yeah, so there is a diary. It's not a diary activity. It's in a forum format, but each of you is in a group of its own. And this way it makes the forum private to only you and I. So no one else in class is able to see what you write. It's the same form for everyone, but no one sees the other's post or can actually reply to them because they don't see them. Try to do things slowly. The idea behind the 8 months is to work consistently, but not to do too much. To try to divide the activities. So thank you for joining us today, and looking forward to your input in April.